This is a Syok podcast.
Syok.
This is Syok Life Confessions podcast with me, Reza Abraham. Today's guest has had her say in changing the world for the better. She's a newspaper columnist, woman rights activist, author, speaker, and also the apple of a famous tree called Mahathir. Datin Paduka Marina Mahathir. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
So I have read the book and it was really, really great to see the journey that you have gone through, the whole pursuing who you are as a person and finding your way and path through it. How would you like to introduce yourself after going through all you have done in life?
Well, I'd mostly like to be introduced as a writer, a human rights activist, and whatever else, a friend, a wife, a mother, everything else. I guess everyone has all sorts of different identities.
So what brought you to that point?
Well, I've always written. From young, I've always loved writing. But, as I grew up, I did some writing, but I wasn't very satisfied, especially in my column, which is nice to have, but then it's short, and I felt that I wasn't able to express everything. But also for this book particularly, everyone's favorite question is, what is it like to be my dad's daughter? And I got very frustrated with this question because I really thought I'm more than that. I have many other things that I do, and it's publicly known, So why is it that people are only interested in this one question? So that's why I decided to write the book.
Yeah, I can see that pretty well throughout the book. So you were born in Alostar, and then before even your father entered into politics, he was considered the first Malay private practitioner in Alostar. And your mom also was the head of public health. That's like pretty high bar for that point.
Yes, and the second Malay woman doctor in the country, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not that we were very aware of it when we were little,
Yep.
because they really brought us up like normal kids, Of course, he was the doctor and everyone knew him. And we had a kind of a traditional background where, just to even say your parents' names was really awkward.
Yep.
So, when we were little, I think we weren't that aware of it. It was only later when he was really more active in politics, and then he got thrown out of politics. That's when, suddenly it became bigger than just our little town.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what are the values that you have picked up in your childhood?
Well, the main thing is that you have to go to school and you have to study. There's no compromise on that. My parents said, you go to school, you go to university, and then after that, you can do what you want. And they never dictated what we should take up at all. The other thing is, of course, that to always tell the truth. And it's basically that. Education, tell the truth, be nice to other people, always be polite, and try and give back to society as much as possible.
Well, one of the values that I found pretty interesting in the book was about discipline.
No, yeah.
You mentioned that that's something that even surprised you having it. So something must have happened that you started to develop that quality.
Well, actually, I can't say that I was a disciplined person all throughout my life. For sure, I went through all the whole young person thing of putting things off and everything. It's only lately as I've become much older that I realized that I am very disciplined, because I realized that's the only way to get things done. And I realized that this is very similar to my dad. He's a very disciplined person, whether it comes to work or whether it comes to eating, food, time management, and that sort of thing. So I guess it's one of those things that you kind of absorb by osmosis from when you're young, and then you realize that if you are more disciplined, you get more things done, you are more productive, that sort of thing. That's it wasn't something I decided, okay, I will be more disciplined,
Yeah.
It just sort of naturally happened, I guess, quite organically.
What's your favorite childhood memory?
I think my favorite childhood memory is just, our first house in Alustar, which had a huge garden, and just playing with my brothers and all, and following our gardener around. We had a gardener, and he would tell us a lot of stories. So it was like routine every day after tea. And it was just great. And we just, because we had favorite stories, and we'd make him repeat them, And, as a child, you never get bored of the same story, as if it's funny, and all that. So we would do that all the time. That's one of my favorites.
Very significant, I noticed in the book, was the detail that you put there. Do you journal? How do you get that much of?
Actually, I don't know. A lot of people have asked me that.
Yeah.
I only started journaling like 5 years ago. Because I realized that my memory was failing. I was forgetting names, dates, places, that sort of thing. So I started journaling. But my childhood memory somehow seemed to be very clear. So that's all I could see, how I felt, what things smelled like, what embarrassing moments for some reason always stick. Once I started writing, actually, more and more things came out. So it's a very interesting process, just writing a memoir, because really your memory gets stimulated.
When I was reading it, I could completely felt myself in that scene with you and going through the motions.
Thank you.
I really mean it.
No, that's what I went to study to write for.
Exactly. So there was a craft, and really there was an art there. The apple and the tree, what was the key motivation behind writing the book?
Well, mostly that. Like I said, everyone's favorite question is, what is it like to be Tun M's daughter? I just felt that a lot of people had a lot of misconceptions that, you're elite of the elite, you have everything easy, everything is open to you and all that. And I always say, really, the best thing is if you go somewhere to a show or something, you always get pretty good seats. And that's about it.
Yeah.
But you also, like I said, you become a surrogate for all sorts of things that people project onto you. I used to, I just walking around malls, and I'd meet this, women, totally strangers to me, and they'd come up to me and they'd hug me and kiss me. And then I realized, I am just a surrogate. It's not me they really want to hug and kiss, but since they can't do the real thing, they do it to me, which is quite nice. That's a positive side of things. But there's also the negative. I'm also the surrogate for a lot of negative things that people want to put on my dad, what they think about him, and I get it instead. And so once I understood that, I thought, okay, that's okay. It's not personal. It's not about me. Yeah.
So when was the time that you came to that realization? I mean, instead of becoming defensive, you tend to listen to people to understand where they're coming from, and you may not be able to please everybody.
I think many times, probably when I was doing the HIV work, because that really projected me out into the public. And to me, it's all about science, right? Yep. This is how it's transmitted. This is how it works, and everything has to be evidence-based and all that. But I found that people were reacting to all the things that we wanted to do, not from a very scientific basis. They're just reacting to things. I realized that pretty easily. So basically, I had to sort of separate the wheat from the chaff, and the ones that I knew I really could not convince, because they're coming from a totally different angle, They're coming from a political angle, and I'm not in that game. So I said, okay, those people I won't bother with. I'll just do what I want, and I will stick to evidence. I remember doing a conference sort of thing where I had to talk to parliamentarians from all stripes. And so that was a good opportunity for them to just come at me. And of course, they say, why are you always talking about countries that have AIDS? Why don't you talk about countries that don't have AIDS, like Saudi Arabia? And of course, I had the figures and stats and everything to say that's not true at all. And I meet Saudi doctors at conferences. Why are they there, you know? So, yeah. So when they do come at me at a place like that, I have the opportunity to answer back.
That's true.
And I welcome that. But the ones who are just shouting, I think I'm very lucky that I was doing all that before the age of social media, you know, so it was much easier because it would take days for people to respond.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you have time to reflect and,
Exactly.
do any correction you need.
Exactly.
Why did you choose AIDS as a thing? Because that is one of the topics that I think there's a lot of stigma and discrimination around it. It was very, very interesting when I was going through the book that people still feel like, they don't want to get even close to someone who has AIDS, still think like...
If they know.
So why did you choose that?
I didn't choose it. It chose me. I was aware there was this global epidemic going on. I had lost some friends to HIV at the time. This was like early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. One day I just got called asking me to join the board of the Malaysian AIDS Foundation. And really that was all about raising money. They thought I would be good at it. And I had done quite a bit of fundraising for other causes, so they knew I had that skill. Of course, the idea of having the PM's daughter on the board, they thought would enhance the image and that sort of thing. What they didn't realize and what I didn't realize is that I would really take this cause to heart and I could work. Then it took 12 years, 12 years of my life, which I'm extremely grateful for. I think it changed me as a person. It really made me grow. It exposed me to so many things I would never have had the opportunity. Yeah, so I'm very, very grateful to it.
How much people have changed or their view over the years towards AIDS at least?
It has changed tremendously. One fine example is that in my day, in the 90s, nobody wanted to associate themselves with HIV. There were very few companies, very few celebrities and all. Now they all come out and they sing at the charity dinner and, all sorts of people support it and all that is not a problem at all.
So coming back to the book, there is this sense of vulnerability throughout the whole book there that I was amazed with this. I have worked with thousands of leaders that the last things they want to do is to talk about their weaknesses and the mistakes that they have made in their life. Vulnerability by itself is the hallmark of imposter syndrome, something that you have been talking about it.
Yes.
So how did you find strength in that vulnerability to beat your imposter syndrome?
I think really it's not to let it be a barrier. Like, I get terrible imposter syndrome when I have to speak on a panel with a whole bunch of academics and things like that. And I think, oh my God, what am I doing here? I'm not as qualified and all that. But I was invited for something. So I speak and I find, it's not so bad. And so I just keep doing it. But every time I feel the same way. But it's never stopped me. I've never really said, I can't do this. Unless it's totally out of my field of knowledge. If someone asks me to talk about, I don't know, wildlife or something, I can't do it, obviously. Otherwise, I just keep doing it. I mean, I've just been in Dubai for the literary festival there, and I was speaking on a panel on Islam, past, present, and future. And I was the only woman. 2, I was with these 2 guys who really, really knew a lot. So I'm like, what am I doing, But it came out okay in the end, so it's all right.
I want to point out the parts like, for example, you're talking about your childhood, the experience you have gone through, and you always wanted to prove yourself, and then that also was not really helping.
Yeah.
He was like, he's a perfectionist, very high expectation for you. He always believed that you should not be a mediocre.
Yes.
So do you think you had the courage to write it 30 years ago?
I don't think so. I think at 30 years ago, I was still developing as a person. I just remembered actually only yesterday that it was 30 years ago that I joined the Malaysian AIDS Foundation. So anything before that was a very different person. Maybe not as interesting, maybe not as mature. So yeah, I don't think it would have occurred to me at all to write anything about myself at the time.
So both your parents are doctors. And of course, later on, they got into politics.
Our parents just didn't push us that way, didn't sort of tell us that this is what you should be doing. And they just left it to us. For them, we just have to go through school and university in whatever field, finish it, and then we can do what we want. And they never pushed us towards medicine. And even politics, they never pushed. My brother, who is still in politics, only went in after my dad stepped down the first time. The value that's been instilled is that you have to make your own way. You cannot rely on the name or anything like that. So, but yeah, they gave us, for that age of parents, that generation of parents, I think they gave us quite a lot of independence.
Sure. That's really awesome. So being the first child, do you ever thought like maybe dad wanted you to be following what he has gone through? I mean, there's always a say, I don't know whether you can correct me if I'm wrong. They say like the first daughter is like the female version of the father.
Well, certainly not explicitly, but no, he certainly never encouraged me to go into politics, or any of us actually. And like I said in the book, one of the biggest regrets that I had was that during his time in office, I never followed him on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
And not because...
The first time,
yes. Not because I felt I should have been there to support him, but also that it was an experience that was missing from my life, considering that, my dad's a big politician and yet I never had this experience. So yeah, he never thought that we had to be there. We didn't really talk politics at the dinner table when we were children. It's not like one of those families where the whole thing is politics.
True.
We're not like that at all. So yeah, I don't know whether my dad thought that I could be a good candidate. I don't know. He still says today that I'm too liberal. That's what everyone tells me. He's always complaining about you. You're too liberal.
There is a part of the book when I was going through it. It really, really made me emotional. If you don't mind, I want to ask you to read that part of the book.
Sure.
So for every one of our listeners also have a feeling of like, how's the writer look like? So that is in hospital. That is his second time having a heart attack, right?
Heart operation, yeah.
Yes. Things are not going great.
No.
And he's not responsive to things. And you're trying to find a way.
So I was there on my own with him in the hospital. I think he was still in ICU. So I was there and he came awake and I tried to talk to him. So he wasn't feeling very happy about anything. So here goes. I look around to find something, anything to lift his mood. Someone, probably Mom, had brought a large CD player with discs of what we children call Mom's wail music. Ambient music meant to soothe you as you rested. Lately, we had decided to bring in something livelier and more familiar to Dad. Shall I put some music on? Nat King Cole, maybe? No. My, he's grumpy. He shouldn't have been in pain anymore. It has been a week since he came out of the operating theatre. His eyes squeeze tighter and his mouth turns down. That means he is unhappy. I frown. Then his bloodshot eyes open and look directly at me. I want to die. I forget to breathe for a second. You want to die? Yes. Does heart surgery make people have these thoughts? Is it the drugs? Should I ignore him and talk about something else? No, I had to confront this head on. Why, Daddy? I hate all this. I hate being here.
Thank you. Has your father confided about this with any of your other siblings?
This particular thing? Not as far as I know. as I said, I was the only one there at that moment. And I guess it was the mood he was in. One thing we realized about our dad is that his state of mind matters a great deal. And we've seen it even recently when, a year ago, when he was very ill in hospital and it really, really bad. And doctors were all pessimistic and everything. And we started to talk to them like, he hates being in here. He hates being in the hospital. He hates being surrounded by machines and people poking him and pushing him and like that. He just wants to go home, and that would make him happier. And so we persuaded the doctors, who were very, very reluctant, because it's on them, right, if something happens. So I said, look, just let him go home just a couple hours. So they did the first day, and then went back into hospital. And the next day they did it a bit longer and went back to hospital. The third day they discharged him. And because really that's the power of the mind is really quite incredible. And that was pretty much the same in 2007. I think that's what we learned in 2007, that when he's really down, what you have to work on is his mind rather than his body. Yep. And the mind will heal the body. And that's exactly what happened. That time we thought, okay, we have to bring in other people. He's fed up of doctors and nurses and even us. Let's bring in other people to talk about things, other things. And last year it was exactly the same, because he was so down and then he was fine. He came out and then he was traveling all over the place, I mean, it's quite amazing. But it really tells you a lot about what the mind can do.
And
it worked. It actually worked.
So he finally find his energy and then get himself out of that situation.
Yeah.
The whole driver is just activated.
Yes, exactly. I said to him that, everyone's going to go. At some point, everyone's going to go. But you're not going to do it here. You gotta go at a place of your own choosing. And I think that was like, okay, yeah, that's right. I don't want to go.
Give a purpose to him.
Yeah.
I don't want to finish it.
Yeah, exactly.
So you chose to bring the conversation towards some good ending. So you decided to pursue your education.
Yeah, I have been talking about going on to do another degree and particularly in creative writing, because I always wanted to do that. And my husband got fed up of hearing me and not doing anything. So he finally said, for your birthday, I'll give you a course. I'll pay for you to go on a course. But I think he was expecting a 1 month, at most 3 months, whatever, and I searched for that type of course, and I couldn't really find one that was suitable. And then a friend said, why don't you go to University of East Anglia, where they have a really good reputation for creative writing? And I looked it up and I thought, hey, this looks great. Looks perfect. And then in the book, I outlined a whole series of coincidences which really made me decide to go. And then in the meantime, the GE14 happened and everything happened and all that. And I wasn't really remembering that I had applied. And then after all that, they came back to me and said, yeah, we want you. So I thought, oh, what, And a lot of people say, why are you going now? Things are happening here. And I say, yeah, but nobody's asking me to do anything specific. So I thought I better go, because this is my one chance. And also, I was expecting to be the oldest person in the class. And if I postponed it, I would definitely be the oldest person in the class. So I went, and I was the second oldest person in the class. But I'm glad I did, because I finished in 2019 in July. And of course, 6-7 months later was COVID. And I would have been so mad if it had been interrupted by
it might have
COVID.
ended online, so the whole joy of traveling is not there.
Yeah. So I had a great 1 year being a student again, and commuting and doing homework and having to read. It was great.
So traveling, you have traveled a lot, many countries.
Yeah.
So which country did you enjoy the most, for those people who wants to put it for their bucket list for this year?
Oh, gosh.
Choose one.
choose one. Most recently, I think Portugal, which is a lovely country and just sort of the right amount of modern and old and history and things like that. And just lovely and people nice and that sort of thing. But we've had some great adventures, like, we've been to Patagonia in South America and Japan, always a favorite. So I can't say I have one particular place that I would recommend, but I actually do have a travel website for women that I founded where we talk about all these different places and how to do it, how to get there.
Nice. So when you've been traveling around in all these countries, is there anything specific that you always wish Malaysia had?
Lots. I think more efficient public transport, more kindness towards those who don't have or who have less. I mean, if you go to Japan, the facilities they have, if you are disabled, things that you don't even notice, but for a disabled person, it matters, sounds and things that tell them how to move around. Just that sort of openness to new ideas and to young people, how do you spark creativity if everything is restricted? So I find that, a lot of things we can learn from other countries, and if we keep thinking that this is all there is and this is the best there is, we will never grow, I think.
So let's leave that to the next generation of Malaysian and make sure they travel.
Oh, for sure.
It's like, and hopefully we would never experience the COVID that we can't travel.
Hopefully, never again.
So to finish things off, we have this cute little game called Final Confessions, which I'm going to throw you some quick fire random questions. And you have only less than 1 second to answer.
Oh, no.
I'm just kidding. So
I can't think that fast.
It takes time, but not too much to answer it. So because we don't want you to think over your answer, we just want you to just say what it is.
Oh, gosh.
Sure. What never fails you to make you happier?
Having nothing at all to do on any particular day.
Do you have a secret talent?
I've discovered I can be quite creative when I journal.
Is there any deep secret that you can reveal today that you didn't even mention in the book?
None.
What is your guilty pleasure?
My guilty pleasure is sleeping in or reading or eating chocolate.
What's the biggest risk you have ever taken in your life?
I think the biggest risk is finding my husband, wanting to marry him.
Who Marina Mahathir would like to trade places for a day?
Right now, Michelle Yeoh.
Good choice. I hope she's listening.
Yeah.
What is the best piece of advice you ever received?
I get advice all the time. I think the best advice came from my mom, saying you can't do everything for everyone. People come to me with all sorts of problems, and it's not really on me to try and solve every single one.
Which of your siblings are you closest to? Pink, wise.
We all fairly close. We all lead our own lives.
You have to choose.
I have to choose one. I suppose right now, maybe Mozani.
So if your mom and dad were sitting here next to you right now, what would you tell them?
What would I tell them? I would say that they have been really great parents, even though not perfect. I'm glad that they brought us up the way they did, because we are very open and they let us do or have careers, whichever we wanted, whatever we wanted. Yeah, and they've taught us to be affectionate. Because I remember from young that we were a much more affectionate family than most people I knew.
So my last question would be, what do you want to be remembered by?
I would like to be remembered for having tried my best, and that I can be quite funny sometimes.
You are.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that I noticed in the book, and I highly recommend every one of our listeners
Thank
to
you.
have a copy of the book.
Thank you.
Full of detail, sarcasm, humor.
Wonder where I got that from.
Thank you, Marina, for being with us.
Thank you.
It's really an honor talking to you.
Thank you very much.
I believe our listeners would be very, very pleased to go read the book, really understand every angle of how your thought process has been developed.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. Catch you on next episode of Shock Life Confessions. Till then, stay inspired.